I'd like to thank Agile Source Partners for joining us today on behalf of Excel and Access for this webinar, which is an Excel refresher on formulas and functions. Excel and Access, for more than a decade, has been providing professional consulting, expert programming, and certified training solutions to business organizations, governmental agencies, and certified training worldwide. Your presenter today is Paul Delke. He is the founder and CEO of one of our partner companies, Talent Computer Associates. Based out of Irvine, California, he's been a Microsoft certified partner for more than 20 years. For more than 25 years, Paul has assisted a variety of companies and industries by automating repetitive tasks, building complex forecasting models, and developing VBA solutions. In many of these projects, Excel reads and writes to databases like SQL Server and the other Office products, including Access, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Word. And with that, Paul?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar, and hopefully we can refresh your skills in Excel and show you some new things that will help make your day-to-day life a little easier. First thing, I'd like to let you know that there's a question on your GoToWebinar. You can type in questions there and during the seminar, and we'll answer them as we can. Christopher is also on the line, and he'll be taking that area. So I'd like to get going here and start with our presentation. The first thing I'd like to do is just a couple of really basic things. Over here on our basic tab, we can do things like, you know, I just brought over one of the tables here, but if I wanted to fill in the dates on these cells that aren't in a block, they're not like in a straight block, I can hold the control key down, and then I can select those cells, and then I can type in the date, or I'll use the shortcut key Control:, which puts the date in. And then when I press Control Enter, it puts the date into all of the selected cells. So whether I'm doing something like that or I'm doing something like that, it puts whatever the selection is, and it's not only entering data. I can make them bold. I can, you know, change the italics. I can change the style. So, and the thing to remember, though, I guess, is that when you're entering, you hold the Control key down and you press Enter, and it puts it into all the cells. So, and then we've got, you know, a couple of other things. We can delete columns. You know, when you highlight a column, of course, you can delete and insert. I normally use the shortcut key Control-, that deletes the columns. Control+ will insert rows or columns. You know, in Excel, there's usually 6 different ways to do everything. When I was reviewing this with Christopher, he goes, "Oh yeah, I use Alt-IC or Alt-IR to insert and rows and columns." So there's a variety of ways to do those types of things. The other thing that I want to remind people of is this Format Painter. It does a copy, and it puts in the formats of whatever whatever you're copying. It also, if you do the whole column, it puts the column width in as well. So I use that a lot when I'm, you know, setting up things. I'll have a total column, and I'll take it and I'll go here, and I'll go here, and I'll go here, and then I'll there, and then so I can get my total columns to all be the same width, because normally they're going to be a little wider than your monthly columns. And we want to talk a little bit about this quick access toolbar. Now, mine is a little, I've added some things to it. This quick access toolbar normally lives up here when you first get Excel, but being quick access, I like to get it down closer to where I'm working, so I put it down here below the ribbon, and you know, I've added things like file open and print preview. That always seems to help a lot. I've added two other buttons. I've added this one, which is the select current region. It just gives me the whole range of wherever I'm selected, and then I'm going to hide these things, and then select visible cells does not select what's there, and then I unhide this. You know, it only selects the visible cells, so that I can you know, pull a piece of the information out, not the whole thing. And so to add these types of tools, you can customize it. You can come over here to more commands. This shows you what's on your toolbar right now, and then you can come over here. Here are popular commands like fill color. I could add that over here, and now when I come here, my fill color is down on the quick access toolbar, and I can, you know, it saves me 1.2 inches of movement, but sometimes the you know, like data sort, you know, or something might be buried a little bit, and it's something you use all the time. It's an easy way to make it a little easier to work day to day. Like I say, these things are things that I use a lot. This one happens to show me the full path to my workbook. So if I'm working on a lot of workbooks where I've got different workbooks in different folders, they might be similarly named. This helps me keep track of where I am. A couple of things about Excel options. There's this, on the File menu, there's this Options, which brings up a lot of different things. Most of the stuff you'll probably not want to use. I've always set my sheets to 1, so when I create a new workbook, there's only 1 sheet in it. The default is 3. You can set background colors. There's some formula stuff here that I normally don't touch. Proofing is, again, something. The save, you can set your location where you want to save your files. By default, it's to your My Documents folder, but you can set anything you want there. And then on the Advanced tab, these 3 here, where you can set, after pressing Enter, you move the selection either down, right, left, or up. The default is down. I don't use this personally. A lot of people do. That's just a matter of personal preference. If you're doing a lot of number entry, you can set automatically insert the decimal places. So that becomes, you get your 2 decimal places. The last 2 numbers are your decimals. So if that's something where you're doing a lot of data input, that may be helpful. Editing directly in cells, that's set by default. This flash fill is a new feature on 2013, and it allows you, Excel looks at the entries you're making and asks you if you want to flash fill. Let's see if it'll work on this. Insert. Sorry about that. It's supposed to read what you're doing, like and and then continue that down. But it's not working out right now. The Microsoft example is first name, last name. If you start typing in the first name in the cell next to it, it's supposed to put the first name all the way down.
Paul, did your screen freeze?
No, can you not see this?
Not at the moment, no. We just see the
sorry.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, sorry.
Okay, oh, no worries.
Perfect, okay. All right, so the only thing about the flash fill, I've run into a couple of really large spreadsheets, large models that this took a lot of time for Excel to try to figure out. So I've shut it off by default for myself. If you're working on really, really big spreadsheets and there seems to be a slowdown when you enter a number, you might want to try to uncheck that to see if that if that'll help the issue. Most of these things I don't you don't need to worry about. Some of the things, well, here we can show or hide the formula bar, this piece up here, and then sheet tabs, you can shut the sheet tabs off so these things aren't shown. And what was the, way down here, we have custom lists. Custom lists are the things that allow you to put in Sunday, and it puts in the rest of the, so I can type SUN here, and you can put in the rest, and it fills in the rest of the days. What you can do is use your own list. This is where this advanced, and then I come down all the way to edit custom lists, and then here it says import, and it already has the highlighted area, so I can import that custom list, and now when I type in where I put Sophia Electric here, or Sofa Electric, and I drag down, it will not give me that. All right. Well, I use this in, here. I use this in sorting all the time, and I'll show you that a little bit later. All right. Then we talked about data validation. And so data validation is where you go to your data tab and validation, and there's a whole variety of options here. The default's any value, but you can say just give me a whole number. So I only can enter whole numbers greater than 0. And so if I come here, I enter a number, great. I enter a minus number, and it tells me, no, you can't do that. Data validation is nice if you're setting up a workbook and somebody else is going to use it, and you want to make sure that they only put in the numbers, or even just numbers. They don't type in, you know, the number 5, and so that's not going to allow them to do that. The other thing you can do with data validation is you can make it look at a list. Well, we can, in the list, you have to start this out with an equal sign. Then you can come over here and say, okay, look at that list, and now I can pick from that list and put in whatever the, you know, so now I only can put in names from a particular list, which is really good when you're doing VLOOKUPs or matches against something that will that you need to have the exact spelling on.
So Paul, if you try to type in there, what happens?
If I try to type in here, it gives me the error message. And
Can you give that list a name as well, so that it's actually a named range?
Yes, you can. Yes, if you you can give this list a named range. So, named ranges is a device in Excel where you can actually name a range, and I'm going to call this my list. And now this is my list, and so now if I go over here
So
and
Paul, real quick, when you do this data validation for the second time, can you walk through it just a little bit slower? Someone wants to see that again. Okay.
All right. So now I'm going to use this named range called my list. So I can go data validation. I'm going to put in here I want a list, and the source is going to be, and it has to have an equal sign, and it's going to be my list. Now, why does it have to have an equal sign? This, when you have this button over here, that means Excel thinks this is a range box, and it's looking for a cell address or the name of a range, a cell range. So I click my list, I click OK, and now it looks at that, and I can pick from there. The other thing I can do with data validation is I can put in an error alert. And so if I try to put in something that's wrong, it's don't do that, try it again. And so that you can prompt the user. What I usually do is, this has to be a number between 1 and 20 or something like that. The input message is something that is helpful again if you're setting this up for somebody else. You can put in an input message, and whenever you select that cell, the message comes up, and then you can, then you do what you need to do. So data validation, again, we can do whole numbers or decimals, and when you do that, you get this, this whole list of, between, greater than, less than. You can pick from a list. You can pick a date, and again, between or a time. I've never used the text length in custom, though you could. You could say I only want texts that are equal to 4 characters. And so if you type in here, it takes it. If you type in that, it gives you the error. Why you'd use that, I'm not sure, but it's there in case you do want it. Yeah, so data validation. We use data validation a lot, and with the named range method, you can put the data validation on another sheet, and it'll still work. So you can hide your sheet or your list on a hidden sheet, and then you can pick from it on a different sheet. So that helps make it more powerful, because normally you don't want this stuff hanging around on wherever you're entering the data. So that's data validation. A little bit about copy paste. Obviously we can copy and paste, but we can copy it as a picture, and then paste it, and this becomes a picture now, and you can do whatever it's not editable. You can do whatever you want with the picture. You can turn it sideways. You can do all kinds of crazy things. One of the things that helps me a lot when I have a display that I have this really wide column, and then I want a bunch of little things like monthly totals. I want my last 4 months of data here, but I have this big wide column, so I can either split the columns up, but if I copy this and then I come over here and I come to the paste box. You know, and the paste normally is just paste everything, but you can paste the formulas, you can paste the values, but down here you can paste it as a linked picture. So now when I do that, I can put my data right above, you know, the wide column. I can put it right above the narrow column, and then it's still linked to it though. So if I change the date here, it changes over here. So
Can you do that again, Paul?
The copy paste?
Yeah, as the picture.
Yeah. So I'm going to copy this, and this is just a regular copy. And over here, I'm going to go use my paste button, and I'm going to paste it. You see it says linked pictures. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do this, but the linked picture is the one that will lost the copy there. Paste linked picture. So now this is linked to this set of data. So, and it changes over here. And you can see when you highlight this, you can see that it has the cell address up here telling you that it's linked back to something else. So we've used this in a lot of our, like I say, in these situations where I have a big long, a wide column and I want narrower columns underneath it. You know, yes, you can do merge and different things to get around that, but this is a method that works.
That's pretty cool. That's actually very powerful. So.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, that helps. And some of the other paste special options, I use this a lot, paste formulas, so I don't want to bring over, I have a formula I want to copy and paste, but I don't want to bring the borders over or the formatting over, so I can paste just the formulas. The values, of course, if you have formulas that you want to lock the values, so if I do, you know, equals, oops, I thought it was a date because I'm in that column. I can now copy this, paste values, and instead of being 400 plus 500, it's now just the number itself. So that helps to, this helps if you're copying a sheet from a workbook into a new workbook because you've done your analysis and now you want to make a report out of it or something. You can just copy the values. Where is, so something like this sheet here, which is just all full of formulas. If I was to take this and copy it and go to a brand new workbook, and I can't go to a new workbook, I'm going to have to go to a new sheet and paste it, the formulas would still be hooked up. But if I then paste and then paste values, so the first paste pastes everything in, including the formatting, and then the paste values locks the formulas, so now it won't be linked back to the workbook I took it from. So this helps a lot when you're moving data. You know, you use the formulas to calculate the data, and then you want to get it off and go somewhere else. And then, yeah, so other paste specials that I use a lot, yeah, that paste formulas. This is something every now and then I'll have to use. This paste special transpose. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to transpose the data, and you see that it turns it from vertical to horizontal. You know, sometimes even with numbers like this, you want to get this over here, and then you go paste transpose, and now you have it in a nice column format. So the transposed piece works pretty well. One of the other things, if you have data, let's see, paste special, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that was it. That was the.
Can you do transpose one more time?
Okay, sure. So I have this data here, and it's by in column format, and I want to get it into the row format. So I can go paste and then transpose, and it'll put it. You can see the results there. Sometimes I come down to this paste special box. So they have all of the icons there, and this paste special box allows me to do a couple of those things at the same time. And transpose is one of them. I can paste the values instead of everything, or just the formulas. I mean, a lot of these are up there. One of the things that you can do is copy and then paste special, and then you can skip the blanks. So there's nothing here, so it pastes everything that has a value, but it skips the blanks so you don't overwrite that particular column because you didn't want to change that one. There's places where I use this where I have data and I have some formulas up in a row that will calculate the data, and I can copy those formulas down into the data without overwriting what I have. What would I?
So Paul, what if you want to change a set of numbers by, say, 20%, or add the number 5 to an entire set? How do you do that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Christopher. So I want to add 20% to the range, to these numbers. I can 20% is 1.2. I can say equal this times this. Now I'm going to notice the formula up to here, F2, F9, F19. I'm going to touch highlight F19 and press the F4 key. The F4 key puts in the dollar signs. The dollar signs lock in the F and the 19, so it doesn't move while I copy the formula across. So I'm going to do that, and this now multiplies 777 times 932, and when I copy it across, see they're all still locked into F19. So they are all multiplying it times the 1.2. I change this to 1.3, and of course everything changes. I could take this 1.3, I could copy it, and up here I can go to the paste special box again. I'll paste special values and multiply. And what that'll do, and you can see it will multiply what I'm copying times all of the values in the range I'm copying to. And you can multiply, divide, add, and subtract.
And that without adding formulas to the worksheet, correct?
That's right. This doesn't put formulas in the worksheet. So if it's a one-time thing that you're not going to need to change, this is a way to bump your numbers or reduce your numbers by a certain amount. And when I paste it, you see that the formula here it's not a formula, it's a hard number, and it's the same number as these, of course, because we've just multiplied 777 times 1.3. It can't be undone, whereas here, this one can be changed, and these things can be, the numbers can change because it's a live formula, but you can multiply or divide a number by another number and change its value, which is really good, as Christopher says, for reducing the amount of formulas that you have in your workbook. Okay, so that there was one other paste special that when you get these numbers that look like
from a CSV file, or where do those numbers come from?
Yeah, like a CSV file. You know, you get the numbers, they're account numbers, they're product numbers, and they look like a number, but they're actually text. And you know, you can't do anything with them because they let's see if I paste values over here. Okay. You can't, you know, they don't act like numbers, but they really are. What you can do is type in a 1, copy it, come over here, and now I'm using the right mouse click to get to paste special. You know, there's in Excel, again, there's 6 ways to get there. But I'm going to copy it, I'm going to go values and multiply. And when I do that, Excel multiplies all the values by 1 and changes them into numbers. It's much faster because there is a way, well, if I do that again, you know, when you highlight this, Excel gives you this tip, and it says, hey, there's numbers here that are stored as text. Should I convert them to a number? Yes, I can do that. But you see, it took a while to do that, and if I'm doing 1,000 of these things, it's going to take a long while, whereas the copy-paste special multiply does it much quicker. So that is something I use a lot when I'm working with lists from other sources. All right. So.
And how are we on the agenda, Paul? Are we on track? A little bit ahead? Where are we at?
I took a little time there, but I'm going to go to filters now.
Okay.
I'm going to move on to the filters, and so I'm using this OEUXE sheet, and we have it set up with filters. To turn filters on, it's on the Data tab and Filter. You can select any cell inside there, and when you click on the filter, it puts these drop-downs on each column heading. Just make sure that you only have one cell selected, because if you don't, it'll put the drop-down for only the couple of cells that you have selected. So you go filter. Now with filtering, it gives you a unique list of everything that's in that column, and you can filter it. The pretty easy way to do it is I just want to see the CJYS, and there they are. And here when I copy it, oh, this is sorted by that. It only copies the visible cells, that kind of like what we were doing with this tool up there. And I can also search, and I can search for CS, and it'll just return the things with CS in them. Over here.
Can you sort? Can you do that by more than one column?
Yeah. So I can search here for, and so it's not only Sempra Energy, but it's anything with SE in it. So it contains anything that contains SE, and then over here I can say, okay, that's great, but only give me the cans ones, and it will.
So if you leave the sheet just like that, how can you tell which columns have a filter on them?
The filtered columns have this little filter icon here, and so you can see which ones are filtered. And then if you never ever need to, you can clear it here, and that clears all of them. Or you can clear any individual one by coming in here and selecting all. Or you can clear everything like that. Also, you can do, again, a variety of it equals, which means it has to exactly equal or not equal. It begins with, M, and then it'll only give us the M values.
So Paul, how would you use that to create a data list to put onto another sheet?
Well, so you want to filter in just the information you want. If it's a particular customer, then you would filter it by customer, and then you could grab this information and copy it and paste it into a different sheet, and it's only that customer's information.
So that's a pretty quick way to create a data list.
It is. It is. Let's see. So also, when you do this search, when you do the, so then you can also come back and then search for another value, and it will put, so I searched for AL or AC, and it put in all the AC values as well. So it added to it, multiple criteria to filter on.
And I know in this sheet you don't have color, but filtering by color, that was also a question people had.
Yes, yes. So if I put in a color anywhere, and then I come up here, I can filter by color. It'll pick up that color, and it'll only show, the color I'm filtering on.
So if you had a sheet with conditional formatting, then sorting by color would be a great, filtering by color would be a great way to go.
That's right. So over here, let's see, we had a numbers. So here's quantity ordered. I'm going to talk a little bit about conditional formatting then, and so we wanted to say give us the top 10% numbers, and it, we can fill it in with light, red, yellow, green. Well, they're at the top, so we'll fill them in with green.
Paul, what if they don't know what conditional formatting is? Can you quickly give them a couple sentences on what it is?
Definitely. Okay. So I can then filter it by that color and only get the top 10% of the people, which means we can grab these people, copy them, and paste them someplace else, or print a report. Conditional formatting. So, I highlighted this column. I went here. There are a wide variety of, as you can see, different ways to format a set of cells. I'm going to clear the rules that I just put in there. So we can highlight anything that's greater than a particular number, less than, between text that contains. So if we say, give me anything greater than 1,000, and you can see it change as we put in the number, it will highlight that, and then you can do your filtering or sorting on that. There's the top-bottom rules, like we just did the top 10%, and it's no, you can change that to top 20, top 50, bottom, above, and below average. Data bars, this fills in the values, based on, because they're really small. There's some really large numbers in this list, like here, that skew the data values. Let's see if we just do that. So it draws a bar for the largest numbers. And if we were to also give me the top 10%, and filter it on that. Yeah, there's the one that's throwing everything else off. This number is so large compared to the others that the comparisons are pretty skewed because of that big number. I get rid of that big number, then that becomes the biggest number. But you can see that the numbers are in comparison to the rest of the list, and so that's another conditional formatting. We can always come in here and manage the rules and edit. You know, well, I didn't want it to be, well, that's the data bar rule. I didn't want it to be 10%, I wanted it to be 20%, so I can come in here and edit that rule. I can change the order of the rules, so the data bars happen before the green. This, if you have green, red, and yellow, that sometimes helps that condition. Let's see, we'll get rid of, again, we'll clear these out, and then there are different color scales. Again, it's comparing the range that you have and to the values in an individual cell to the rest of the cells in that range. So if we just do this range and go to a conditional formatting, you know, we'll only get those that are compared. The icon sets, you know, this is good, bad, and indifferent. Let's see, there's, here we have, it's been set up with the icons, so the good numbers are in a green dot, red dot. I use these things a lot for the up and downs. If it's going up really, you know, if it's comparing, you know, year to last year, those kinds of things, are we up, down, similar? So the icon sets, and there's a wide variety to choose from. So that conditional formatting can get into a lot of different things, because you know, you can put a formula in the workbook that says, and it can be a really complex formula. I'm just going to say, you know, equals this is greater than 5,000, and that's true. Let's make it 50,000, and it's false, and this one is true. And then I can set the conditional formatting to say new rule, a formula equals this, and I want to turn it green and OK. And if it's true, so this is a little more, yeah, so then it can, it can be based on another cell. It doesn't have to be based on its own value. I guess that's what I'm trying to show here. So that's another way that you can use conditional formatting.
And it can reference a cell on another sheet as well, correct? So if you want to have your criteria on another sheet, and then this one just colors as, okay.
Colors it based on some other criteria. That's right. Yeah. And then, well, I know there's going to be a lot, but you can also use conditional formatting for duplicate values. So it'll show you all the duplicate values. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense in this column probably, but there's places where that would help. And I use that. I use that in places where I want a particular column to have unique numbers, like a unique account number or a unique customer number. And by setting that, and somebody types in the same number twice, it'll pop it up as red, and then, you know, they can see that there's the same number is there somewhere else. All right.
So can you also use conditional formatting to send a message? Let's say at the bottom of a column, the font is white and it's adding up a certain number, and if that number is higher or lower than another number, it'll actually put up a color of the font for you so you see it.
Yes, that's another way to do that. Sure. So you could, I think you're saying is you're going to sum these numbers, and then you had this as white font.
Yeah, it says a white font. So if the sum of those zeros is actually greater than 0, which say it shouldn't be, you would now see the text and maybe cell shading as well.
Yeah, this
a quick way to prove
greater than
different
0. Yeah, yep. And so then if I come in here and I type this, then it'll show. Otherwise, it doesn't even show. So yeah, that's a good, like for a check cell where you want everything, you add up two different ranges and they should be 0, and when you subtract the two ranges, and you don't want it to show 0 all the time, but only when it actually is out of balance.
Okay, well, you're welcome. What's next?
Okay, so next we want to talk about is importing data. I wanted to come over here to this tab here. I saw this. I selected the whole range, and one of the things that I use to get around the range, because this is a huge range, and how big is it and where does it go? I hold the Control key down and press the period key. What that does is it takes me to all 4 corners of whatever my selected range is. It kind of helps me figure out where I'm at and what's going on the workbook. And in this particular case, I see these values. And I'm going, well, why is that a value? Well, let's see what the formula is. Here's a formula, but why is it a value? And so this formula says if today minus whatever the value is in W8988, so W8988 is there, and it's empty, you can see, then if that is greater than 0, then show me how many days it is. So I look at this and I go, okay, so is this greater than 0? Well, if I highlight just the area that is that test, and I press F9, F9 evaluates what's there. Now it shows a value. And how come it's showing a value? Well, if I look at today, it returns a number, and that number, the way Excel stores dates is by how many days we are after January 1st, 1900. So a little bit of trivia here. We're at 42,299 days since January 1st of 1900. So, well, that's a date. Okay, that's a number. And then what's this number? Well, that's not a number. Look at it. It's text because it has the 2 double quotes. So we can't use text in a numeric formula. So let's go over here and find out why it's text. It's saying if this cell is blank on the OEUX sheet, then put in text. But if we put in a 0 instead, then we get a number here. It's a really large number, and we really didn't want that. So we're going to go back to the text, and then over here we can say, we can wrap this in a function called if error. And so if this thing evaluates to an error, then make it text as well so it doesn't show up on the sheet, and it gets rid of all those values. So the if error, so a couple of things that I covered there. One is to look inside of a formula to see what part of the formula isn't working well, highlight it, push F9. And that'll show you what isn't working. And the other part is, if you don't want to see the values, you don't want to see the errors, wrap it in an if error statement, and if it's an error, it'll put in whatever you put in after the comma. I mean, it might be a number.
But you can also put a message in there, correct, saying check
Yeah.
row.
Yeah, or yes, you're right. Yeah, check your date. Your date is off, or your date, so yeah, you can put whatever you want in there, and that will, help you evaluate your workbook when you're getting into those error conditions. All right, so that is
Can everybody see the far left of the workbook? Can you answer yes? Paul, are you full screen on the?
yeah, I'm full screen. Oop, no, I'm not. Now I am. So I just shifted back to this.
Okay. Now, can you guys see the row and column headings? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. One other thing I wanted to go over is a go to special. Let's see. Yeah. So go to special, I'm going to press the F5 key, which brings up our go to box, and we can go to my list and all these things. But if I click this special button, it says go to comments. Well, we don't have any comments in this workbook. Constants, things that are typed in, and only go to numbers. Let's uncheck the rest of these. And it will select only the numbers in this worksheet. Could be useful. Where I use this a lot is, let's see, I think over here. No. Yeah, so here I'm going to go to special formulas. So only give me the formulas. And now I can see where there are formulas in this workbook and where there aren't. Sometimes when you're looking at a big workbook and it's been used by a lot of people and you think a column should be all formulas, but it's not, you can go to constants, or you can, if somebody's put in a formula where they shouldn't have, you can do the go to formulas and find these things pretty quickly. One of the things I use a lot is go to formulas and then errors. So I can look at a whole workbook and click this, and no cells were found here. But if there was an error on the workbook, especially when you're looking at something like this, special formulas errors, and because we fixed that cell, there are no more errors here. But this is a large workbook, and that go to special formulas errors is something that works pretty well for me. One of the other things is I use the go to special blanks. This will just show me all the blank cells. I use this with sometimes I'll get data that's like this. So I get this data, I'm just going to put in some random numbers there, and I have to do a VLOOKUP, and I want to add up all the Januaries, and so you can use a formula to add up all the Januaries, but this doesn't say January because it came through like this. If I highlight this range of cells, I press the F5 key, go to special, go to blanks, click OK. It highlights the blanks. What I do then is type in the equal sign, and I press the up arrow key. And then I press Control Enter. And now it fills in those empty cells with a formula that picks up the name, and then I have to copy this and then paste special and then paste the values.
What were those keystrokes? Those keystrokes again, one more time.
Yeah. So highlight the cells, F5 brings up the go-to box, and then special, and then blanks. Click OK. Press the equals key, the up arrow key, and then Control Enter. And then highlight the cells, copy, and then paste special values. And then now you have the data set is filled in so that you can do different formulas against this data set. And I think, speaking of formulas, why don't we do a sum if. So I'm going to grab these three. I'm going to put them here, and I'm going to say, what's my total for January? And I'm going to go equals sum if. And as far as sums go, I can sum up the whole thing, and it comes up with a number.
So which sum if are you using? There's a couple there, right? So
there is. So I'm going to use the sum if that is just for, let's see, so I can see in our Excel helps us with all the different sum, and we have sum if, and sum if s. These other ones are around, but I use some product, but the rest of them, the sum of the squares, I mean, if you want to get crazy. But I'm going to use the sum if, and the sum if says add the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So I'm going to open the parens, and it gives me my help here. So my first number is what's the criteria range, and wait, it's not sum if the range for the criteria is here. And again, I'm going to press the F4 key, and that locks in the range so it doesn't move as I copy the cells down. And then I'm going to say comma, and then I'm going to highlight January. Now here I'm going to press the F4 key, but I really don't want it to lock on 25. I want that to copy down, but I want it to lock on F in case I'm going to copy this across. So I'm going to hit the F4 key again, and a third time gives me that combination that I need. The F4 key just cycles through all of the various combinations.
there's 4 of those, correct?
And there's 4 of them, yes. No dollar signs, both dollar signs, dollar sign on the column only, dollar sign on the row only. And then I'm going to say, okay, give me then the column I want to, the range I want to add up. And again, the F4 locks that into place. I close the parentheses, and now I get $273. And if I highlight this and look down here on my status bar, I can see that the sum is 273.
Okay.
And I copied it. Can you see the status bar?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. So the status bar, I use this a lot. Just to highlight some cells, what's the total of that? How many of them are there? Here's the count. There's 5 of them. The average is this. All 5 are numbers.
Okay, so you kind of did it the intermediate way. What about using the FX button? So instead of typing it.
Okay, so the FX button, here, the most recently used, I can pick my sum if, or I can go to all the various different types of formulas there are, and there are a lot of them. But if I come to sum if, and then it asks me for the range, and again, see these buttons here tell me that I'm going to highlight a range. I'm not going to type some text in there, so I'm going to say this range is here, and again I have to push the F4 key. The criteria is here, and if I push the F4 key 3 times, and then the sum range is here, and I push the F4 key. And that tells me, it shows me what I'm looking at, and it gives me the answer that I'm going to return to that cell. And if you need to, the help is here that gives you more information about that function. And if I click OK, then I get that 108.44. And I can copy that down. And since I copied it down, the F26 turns into F27, but the rest of them are all locked in place.
How's the other sum if different, the plural?
Okay, so sum if s. So I'm going to push this over a little, and I'm going to take some stuff from there. Paste special, transpose. Oops. Paste special, transpose it back. Copy it down. Okay, so now I have two criteria. I have both the month and placed by. And so now I want to change this sum if into a sum if s. So we'll start over. Sum if s, and the s means it can be multiples. Now, whereas the sum if started with the criteria range first and then the sum range at the end, they flipped it around here, and you can see on the help down here that the first thing we put in is the range that we want to sum. So that would be this range, and then F4, and then the criteria, and then we have to follow it with a comma and put in the criteria range, comma, this, and I'm going to do the F4, and then what is the criteria, and I'm going to put in the January, and I'm going to lock it to the F column, and then the second criteria is going to be this column. I'm going to lock it with the F4, and then the second criteria is here, and I'm going to lock this with, I want to let the columns change, but I don't want the row to change. Then I'll close the parenthesis, and I'll use my Control Enter, and it now fills in the values for each combination of January and Preciado. So if I look here and I look here, I have the 130.37, 130.37.
So is that comparable to an array, would you say?
An array. Before they had this function, we had to do what was called an array formula, which was a different way to do things, a little harder. So this really helped us make formulas that are a lot easier to read and enter.
And easier on the calculator engine as well?
And easier on the calculation engine, exactly. They calculate much quicker than the old array formulas did. So, so there's that help with, so you can have multiple values and display them in a different manner.
So without actually showing it, you can also do that for count and for average as well, right? So
that's right. Yep. Yeah. There's a count if, and a count if s, and then and then the average is the same. There's an average if, and an average if s. So yeah, all three of those functions, common functions that we use, sum, count, and average, you can have these multiple.
So I have a question for you. Let's say you have a table, and when would you use a VLOOKUP versus a SUMIF?
Well, a VLOOKUP is going to return a single value, and based on looking up something. So if I want to VLOOKUP the amount in January, I can say equals V lookup, and then what's my value? It's going to be January, and I'll lock this into F just in case. And then where am I going to look this up? I'm going to look it up here, and I'm going to highlight that area, make it F4. That's just good practice. And I want the third column, so that's the third column, and I want it to make sure that it's an exact match and not a partial. And so what this brings back, though, is just the first one. It's not a sum. It just brings back the first value. So VLOOKUP is really great if I have a list of data and I want to find out, you know, what's the first date. Maybe these dates apply to everything. Maybe this is the date of the first time the supplier was used, you know, the first invoice they ever sent to us. So here I can do that VLOOKUP, and I can look up the supplier, because this area down here might be a list of 1,000 rows, but they're all going to have the same answer. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to say look it up in this range, F4, give me the second column, and give me an exact match, and it'll look up and it'll return the date from this. And so I would use this only if there's a fixed list somewhere where I need to get it. Many times you get a set of data with a number in it for the supplier number, and you want to put the actual supplier's name. So you would have a list of supplier number, supplier name. You would look it up, and it would return the number or the name that you want. That is, yeah, and this this false thing, the false thing came about the original VLOOKUP was something like this. So the original VLOOKUP was for tax tables, and so you would have a value over here, 8,000, and you'd say VLOOKUP, that number, comma, into this range, comma 2, comma true, making an approximate match. And when you did 11,000, it would return the 5%. So what VLOOKUP here did is it goes through this list, goes bigger than that, not as big as that, come back to this one and return that number.
Does sorting matter or does not matter?
Sorting does matter, especially in this version, because once it sees a bigger number, it will it'll stop at that number. Whoops. See, so here it went bigger than that, not as big as that, roll back, use this number. So
so you do want to use the fourth parameter and you want to know what to set it to.
You really, I almost always use the fourth parameter as false, and so it's an exact match. So
what's the default? If you don't put the fourth parameter in, what is the default?
The default is false. So you can, nope, the default is true. So here, 11,000 doesn't match exactly, so it returns an NA. I can't find it. So, and that is like, if again back to the where you're going to look up a supplier number and return the supplier name. If you can't find the supplier number, you want to return an NA. You don't want to return some other value, and then that way you can go do your select special formulas errors, and it'll highlight all the errors for you, and then you can go figure out why doesn't that data exist in the lookup list, the list that we're going to look up into.
Okay, and how are we doing on the agenda right now?
We're doing okay. I want to get into some data importing, and then we'll come back to some of the other, well, let's do some other formulas since we're here. We looked at the today function, and and Excel helps us by formatting it as a date right away. So, and it's just today, and so if you have a report where you want to say sales as of, and then I'm going to concatenate, which is another function. But instead of, there's a function called concatenate, and I'm going to concatenate this. Oh, I'm sorry, there's going to be another function in here. The text of this, comma, month, day, year. And so the sales are as of 12, so you could have a header in your title, and this is how we use today a lot. We could have a header in the title, and it would just say this is as of this date. And today's are additive, so you can add and subtract. Since we saw earlier that really only is a date, 42,000 something, we can add and subtract days to it to make it different dates. Yeah, so I use this ampersand here. What we could do is instead use the concatenate function, and we would concatenate as of sales as of.
And you can also use that in a chart, correct? In a chart
correct.
title or?
In a chart title, yes. Yeah. One more there. Okay, there we go. So you can either use the concatenate function, which is just then this text, comma, whatever text you want. I guess an easier example would be why does it keep throwing in an extra? Okay. So yeah, and I should put a space after one of them so that you get the space in there as well. The other thing, let's see, I don't know that I had. There's other functions that do text. If I wanted to just pull out, for whatever reason, the last 3 characters here, I could say equals the right function, and I highlight this, and I say I only want 3 characters, and it just brings out the SWG and the PGE.
So Paul, a good example would be if the cell has last name, comma, middle initial, first name, right? And you had to break that out into 3.
Yep, and I think there was something here that, yeah, here's this product category. So this product category has a dash description. So I want to break these 2 apart. So I want ME01 in one cell, and I want meters in the other cell, so I can filter on all the ME01s. So to do that, I would use a couple of different functions. I would first find where the dash is. So the find function says find whatever text first within this text. So being text, I have to put a double quote there and find me the dash, and then I'm going to put a comma, and then within the text, within this text here in this cell, close the paren, and it says that the fifth character is the dash. And their fifth character is pretty much all the way down here. Let's come up to the top. And then I would say, okay, to get this, I want to get only the text. I would use the left function. And here we say, this is the text I'm looking for. And I only want this many characters. But really, since that found the dash, which is the fifth character, I don't want to include that, so I want to minus it by 1. And now that gives me the SVCS. And over here, I would use a different text function called mid. It gives me the middle of a range. So I could highlight this, and then I could say this, but I don't want the dash, so it's going to be +1. And then I have to give it how many characters do I want to return. Well, I don't know. There's different different amount of characters in each word, so I just put in 99, and Excel knows only to return the text. So then it splits these into 2, and I can now I can filter on my product category and only bring up a particular product category or a particular description. So it breaks it out in half. So so what we use there, we find the character that we want to break it out with, and for the first last name comma first, that you would look for the comma, and then you would do the same kind of thing. And then you would get the first name and the last name and then the first name, and broken out into two columns. So we use the find to find what we want to break it out by. We use the left to get whatever's to the left of that character. We use the right to get whatever's to the right of that character. So then if we come back here, we have we talked about the VLOOKUP. There's an HLOOKUP that looks horizontally instead of vertically. That's what the V and VLOOKUP is. What
if you want to look up to the left instead of to the right?
Yeah. So one of the things is I want to if these values are over here, then how do I get these values? Well, I can I want to get the first month that these suppliers appeared in. So here I can't VLOOKUP because VLOOKUP always has to look at the far left column and then go to the right. So we can't use VLOOKUP. What we could use, though, is a combination of functions called index and match. So index says, give me a reference, which is a set of cells. So give me a set of cells, and I'm going to F4 that. What's the row number and what's the column number? So I'm just going to type in here 3, 1. And it's going to return January because that January is the third one in the first column. Now, since I only told it to look at one column, if I put in here the fifth column, it can't do that because there's only one column to look at. And since it's only one column, I can get rid of that and it still returns January. But we don't know that, January was the first one for all of these things. So we want to replace the 3 with a function that will find the first supplier name and then return the January. So here I'm going to split it into 2 cells, but normally we just do this all in one cell. So I'm going to match that name into this column or this set of cells, F4, and I'm going to say give me an exact match. That's the 0, exact match. Press enter, and so it gives me 1, 2, 3, and if I get rid of this one, that turns into 5. And so I can combine these two together to give me, instead of the 3, put the match statement. So now we have the index. What are we looking up? Or where are we looking? And the match statement says which row in that range are we going to look at, and then it returns that January. One of the things I do when I have lots and lots of data that are going to be looking up, so let's get rid of this match, and we'll go here, and we'll lock that into the M column, and then we'll unlock the B, so we'll take the $ off the B, so it'll adjust, and then I can, now it picks up, see, if you're working with 10,000 rows, match and VLOOKUP are really, use a lot of calculation, because they have to look at the whole range every time. So if I'm going to take, 500 rows and put a VLOOKUP in it, every time it has to look up through 10,000 rows, it's going to take a while to recalculate the spreadsheet. So what we do is we put the match in first. This is what takes up a lot of the time. It finds out where these are, and then we just use the index function to pull in the data, and then it can pull in different columns of data as we copy this across. Now, of course, if I go here, it's going to be zeros because these are zeros, and then it's picking up that column.
So this is fairly complicated for people that just see it the first time, correct?
Yep.
And
yeah,
so, but it is worth using, right? And if we actually have a PDF on it, so if you send me an email, I'll send you a PDF on how to do index match. It's about 3 pages, and then we also have links, and you can look online. But it is worth using. All yours.
All right. Then, so I'm going to then leave the formulas for a minute and import a couple of text files. So Anita asked me to review these. So I get some text files from a vendor, and I need to bring them into Excel and do something with them. So since they're text files, when I do the file open, it shows me only Excel files. I need to go over here and say text, and here's a text file that we'll import. I click open, and it brings up this text import wizard. Now, there's a couple of things I can do here. I can say it's delimited, which means characters such as comma or tabs separate each field, or I can say fixed width. If I go to fixed width, it's going to ask me to put in a line where I want to break these things into separate columns. As you can see, that's not going to work here because I double-click to get rid of them because this file actually is delimited. So I'm going to click on delimited. I'm going to also click that my data has headers, so it knows. I click next. Now it still shows me the data down here, and it's still pretty ugly. And it's not tab, but I can see it's the pipe character, what we call the pipe character. Now the pipe character is just above the enter key. It's a shifted backspace or backslash. And data people love to use the pipe character because most normal humans don't use it. It's not something we usually use in our text. So we can use that as a delimiter because we know that if I make it a comma delimited and you say it's Delke, comma Paul is my name, it'll think that needs to get split up into 2 columns. But if I use the pipe delimiter, it ignores the commas and only uses the pipe. So I put the pipe delimiter in here, and you see immediately Excel shows us what's going to happen. and it's breaking it into the columns just like we want it to. So I click Next. Here we can set formatting if we wanted to. I don't need to, or we can even skip columns if we want to. And then I finish, and it brings in the formulas. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, good. So it brings in the file in separate columns based on those pipe characters, and now I can do whatever I want to do with this thing. I can data filter it, so I can see a particular vendor. So I can, all the things that we've been doing before. I normally click over here on this Select All button, double click on a column to get all the columns to widen out so I can see the data. So importing text files, then now this is a regular Excel file. Even though it's a text file, if I go to save it, I'll do a file save as, and I'll say, I want to save it as a Excel workbook, and then it allows me to save it. Now I'm Excel. But I can do a variety of things with this. I can pivot it. I can filter it. I can pull pieces out of it. Just a basic pivot chart would be, or pivot table would be like this. And we'll get into pivot tables more in the next session. But I can make a pivot table out of this, and then here's the vendor name and quantity received. So very quickly, I can take this chunk of data, import it, and then start doing Excel things to it, so that I can quickly analyze the data. There was another text file, and you see Excel remembers that I was looking at text files. Now this one, when I open it, I can see that the top of this is like a header, and I don't want to bring this stuff in. I only want to start at row 4 here, where my data starts. So up here, I can say start the import at row 4. My data has headers, and when I come over here, it's tab delimited down there. It's already put in the lines for me. So then when I finish, it imports the data without that header getting in the way of what we want to do. So then you can work with this. Now this is a company number and customer number. So somewhere you would have that list of customers that you would do a VLOOKUP against. Now it wouldn't be on this sheet, but you would have something like that, and so then you can do your VLOOKUP and look up the customer number and look it into this range over here, F4, comma false, and sorry, comma 2, comma false, and then we get the customer number. Or we get NA because I didn't put those in. So, obviously this list only has one customer number and a company number. But so that's, when you get lists like this, that's where this VLOOKUP really helps to be able to bring in a particular a description, because these numbers aren't going to probably make for good presentations. Unless everybody in the company knows that customer number 1120 is customer 3. All right. So yeah. So
you're
then
you're doing great. Keep going.
okay. So again, we can pivot it. We can so like in this, if we have customer name, and then if we insert a pivot chart and the pivot table, then we can put in the customer name and their sales, and Excel puts in a chart that it thinks is most appropriate for this kind of data, and we have to, and so it draws the chart for us. I would want to go to the value, the number format, make it a number, get rid of the decimals, because when we're dealing with these big of numbers, we probably don't want decimals. And then we can go there. And then here, this is crazy to have numbers with all those zeros, so we can format the axes, and we can display units. We can display it in the millions, and so now we have millions, and which makes a lot more sense for a chart using, containing numbers like that. So that quickly, that was very quick. We could import something, we can lay in a VLOOKUP, and then quickly pivot it, show it like this, see if there's anything that makes sense to look at. Not a lot of data in here that would be interesting other than the total customer number. But if we went over to this one, we probably have some interesting data in here. Maybe product description. Oh, that's too big. Vendor type. No, they're all ends. Okay. But you can yeah, they're all the same. But that you can quickly make sense out of your data instead of just looking at a lot of
Paul, can you show how to create a chart off of that pivot table?
Yeah. So insert pivot chart, and it's going to give us, what it thinks is the best. We could do a line chart, and then, again, there's lots of variations on that. We could do a pie to show, for something like this, a pie might be interesting because it shows you who's doing the most, and even splitting out a piece of the pie. And then the other thing with the charts is so with the total here, we can come up here, we can go into the formula bar, click equals, click on the cell, and it'll put in and then the cell now, the chart title is linked back to a cell that might have the date, and it might have some other information that you want to show up on the chart, and not have to go and edit the chart every time. It could say equals total sales of, and then that number, comma, pound, comma, pound 0. So now we have the total sales of that, and if we take out one of the people, we remove one of the people, that number changes because we've removed someone. So now the chart title is dynamically linked to some of the data in the pivot table. And this formula, we'll get into this more in the next one, but it created this get pivot data formula, which always tracks, rather than tracking cell B18, it's tracking wherever the total of the sum of quantity received is. So, because if we were looking at B18 and we took somebody out of here, of course, B18 now is 0. So the get pivot data gets information out of your pivot table even when the pivot table changes. So that's, so yeah, so charting, and then, yeah, so this, if you're going to use this, you know, next week when the new file comes in and you import the new file, and instead of 315 rows, it's 330 rows. So I'm going to just do that. So this is 83,777. It didn't change. Why? Because pivot tables don't update automatically. You have to refresh them. So I right-click refresh, but it still didn't change. Because if I come up here in the pivot table tools, the data source is looking only to row 315, and now we have 330 rows in it. So I have to change that to 330, and now when it refreshes, it lost everything. Thank goodness for undo. Okay, well, you need to...
What have we not covered today so far that we have to cover?
I think we've covered everything that was on our agenda. So should we look at charts a little more?
I think you should look at charts a little more and show them how quickly you create them and the various styles that you can use so you don't actually have to do the formatting yourself.
All right.
You should be able to create a chart in less than a minute. So
yeah.
Once you get good at it.
Yeah, again, you can insert, and then they have recommended charts. There's lots of variations on charts. We're going to go with the pivot chart, which still gives us the variations, just in a different, but it's now hooked to the pivot table. So again, like we did with that formula, the get pivot table formula, instead of being hooked to a set of cells, it's actually hooked to the pivot table. And so, you know, our basic column chart, we can, those don't apply, but we can do we can make it 3D. And actually, we can have oh, I don't have any templates. Recent. As We can format the chart area. Christopher, I'm kind of running out of what am I going to format on this. It's a pretty simple chart. So
if you go up under, back up under format, or is that where you are right now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, format shape. I can format, well, I can do these type of things. I can, on the series, I can add data labels, so that puts the numbers up at the top. I can format those data labels so that they are, includes the category name or not, and I can make them middle center.
So if you have any questions, can you please put those in the chat window, and Paul and I will try to answer those before this session ends. And Paul, when you're finished, we have a first question in for you.
Okay.
So
all right, go ahead.
When creating formulas, does the F4 lock in the data or make it a $?
It makes it a $. The F4 makes it a $. So so if I come up here and the F4, it doesn't, the $sign locks the formula to a single cell or a single column or a single row, depending on where the $signs are.
You have two types, right? Absolute is one, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the two types of are relative reference is I am looking at this cell, and the cell is B34. If I copy it to the right, it goes to C34. It changes the column. If I copy it down, it goes to B35 because I've copied it down. So it always is moving relative to where it started. If I lock a column and I copy it across, it keeps the column, so I'm always looking at B34, but it does not lock the row. So I can copy it down, and I did that up here where I locked the column for the dates, so I could copy it across and it would always look at the month name, and I locked here the row so it always looked at row 24, and even as I copied it down, it still looks at row 24. And so it always looks at column F, and it always looks at row 24. So locking it, there's again the 4 different ways. It's unlocked completely like we did down here. Here we can lock just the column, so we can copy the formula across and always look at that column. This column might contain your markup of 10%, and you want everything multiplied by the 10%. And then I lock the row, so I can copy it down and always look at that row, which might be a % of total. So if I just do something like this, sum that stuff, and then over here I say equal this divided by this, but I lock that cell, and then I get my % of total. And it doesn't matter, so I locked it both D and the 33. I just needed to lock the 33, so it gives me the same answer either way. But it doesn't lock the cell. The only way I can lock the cell and keep it from changing, because here, if I change this to 50, that 9% goes to 10%. If I copy this and I paste special values, now that actually locks the value in. You can see it's 9.749, instead of being a formula. When I change this back to 45, the 10% is still there because it's not a formula. I've locked the value. So copy, paste special values locks the value. The dollar signs just lock the cell, either the absolute cell or a column or a row, depending.
So while you're there, I have a question for you. What is the quickest way to see formulas on the worksheet versus hard-coded values? Do you use control tilde or?
Control tilde will set the view. So and Christopher, that's a great tool if you're opening up a workbook that you don't know about. Here's control tilde toggles the view, and now I'm looking at all the formulas. So these are the these are the values that are in this, or the formulas that are in the cell. Now, if it's not a formula, it's just the same as the text that's there. But if it is a formula, you can see it.
Okay.
And, yeah.
And Mark,
tilde. Yeah.
So I did send out an email to everybody. It has an Excel workbook which has 3 different formulas. So VLOOKUP and then index match. And so you can actually, it's a really simple workbook. You can play with that. And I sent out an article that goes over VLOOKUP and index match that was written by a Microsoft Excel MVP a few years ago. It's long, but it's a great read. Once I finish editing this video, I'll be sending that out as well. So look for that to come. And in the email I just sent, I have Paul's email address and my email address. If you have questions, today or next week or whenever, please just shoot them over. If you could send them to both of us so we both see it, that would be appreciated. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Really enjoyed the training today. Once again, this is Paul Delke of Talon Computer Corp. was doing the presentation. You should have both of our email addresses. We're going to be working on the pivot table presentation, so we're going to do a more detailed survey on that because there's just so much that you can do with pivot tables. And we look forward to doing that one with you as well. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone.